From rural Fairfield, Iowa to an emerging wine region halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles. It's a non-traditional journey. While many of Connor McMahon's friends might have been finishing six-packs, he was sampling wine at family dinners. Now he is more than a decade into owning his own vineyard in Paso Robles, California. Hi, I'm Dave Price, and this is the American Farmland Owner Podcast. Now, maybe it's his unique route that got him to this place that allows Connor to have no hesitation when it comes to hitting the road and talking to people, especially young people, about wine. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the challenges he has when it comes to things like water and staffing. Plus, he will share how bringing people to sample his wines in person is so meaningful to him. But first, we're going to talk about something that always fascinates me, and that's how a business owner chooses the name for his business. So in Connor's case, this is Full Draw Vineyard. Let's start with Full Draw. Where'd that come from?
So growing up in Southeast Iowa, a little bit of background about myself, grew up in a small town called Fairfield, Iowa. And with that being the largest town in about a 30-mile radius, we had to find a way to keep ourselves as kids entertained and busy outside of the house. So my brother and I—
Because your parents demanded it?
Go outside, don't come back until the bell ring. But we just got interested in shooting archery as young kids because it kept us outside all the time, and you could, shoot targets or run around the woods and pretend you're, playing whatever game you want to play. And I just really wanted to keep something close to my childhood when I came out to California back in 2011. So when I purchased the property in 2012, it took about 6 months for me to figure out the name that I wanted. But with you having your bow pulled all the way back, you're at Full Draw. And so that would be a creative thing to keep connected to my past without getting too technical or anything like that. It's just kind of a fun and whimsical name and keeps it close to me.
But a name's permanent, right? Like, I mean, it makes sense to take time with it because you can't screw that up. You can't do that once. You can't do that more than once.
No. And so with the wine industry being a little bit different than other industries, so originally I started just being a farmer and growing grapes and selling those grapes to other wineries here locally. I thought that if I ever were to start a wine label and start making wine for myself, I'd be able to name that something different. So I technically have Full Draw Vineyard and then XXX Winery. So I thought I'd give myself a little bit of time to be able to stew over that for a few years. But one thing in the wine industry that's an interesting concept is after you make your wine, you can then send it to wine writers or critics and you get your wine, quote unquote, scored. So a handful of the wineries that were purchasing fruit from me before I started making wine were getting some very acclaimed scores, some very notoriety scores. And so they had done some marketing for me. So I said, why would I change my wine name from Full Draw Vineyard to XXX Winery? So I just kept it Full Draw Vineyard throughout so that there was already some marketing done, not at my expense.
Fairfield, Iowa is not a vineyard mecca of the world. What is it about, what was it about wine and maybe originally grapes that made you move your life to the West Coast and do this?
Oh, that's a great question. So another thing, growing up in a small town, our family, my dad specifically said, if you want to eat good food, you need to learn to cook that food because you're not going to go to a nice restaurant in Fairfield, Iowa and get a really good meal. You had Subway, Casey's Pizza, McDonald's, and now there are some other restaurants there now, but that's kind of post my time there. But my brother and I got interested in cooking with my dad, and that just kind of naturally transitioned into him introducing me to wine at kind of a youngerish age. Not that we were drinking together, but he just said, hey, come taste this. So then that led into a whole broad, expanded horizon where I go, oh my gosh, this is just so cool because it's not just winemaking. There's so many different elements in that industry that are so different. And that led me out to working for a wine retail store out in Carbondale, Colorado, called the Catherine Store. The woman who owns it, Rhonda Black, knew that I liked these varieties coming from this area of Paso Robles, which are Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre. So she actually opened my eyes to this region specifically. And so once I started tasting those wines with her, to help myself be able to sell them, I just said, I think it would bring more credibility to myself if I knew how wine was made. So that's what led me out here. So in 2011, I got a harvest internship with a winery called Booker Vineyard, which is actually immediately adjacent to Full Draw Vineyard. And about halfway through my internship in 2011, the owner, winemaker, Eric Jensen, asked if I wanted to stay on full time and become the assistant winemaker, which I just jumped on. I mean, being a 24-year-old kid from Iowa, getting the opportunity to learn under one of the best winemakers in our region and learn his craft, I fell in love with it. So called my family and said, hey, I'm moving to California and I'm going to be a farmer. And they said, those are two things we never thought we'd hear you say. So they gave the full support, and that just kind of snowballed my career past that.
I suck at golf. I don't have the commitment, the patience. Obviously, I don't have the skill. But fair to say that making wine and doing it well requires even more patience than learning the crappy game of golf.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good analogy. It is. And one of the biggest things that we start with and have to start with is high quality fruit, high quality grapes. So really, when we're breaking down the industry and then breaking down Full Draw as a business, we really target a majority of our work out in the vineyard through the growing season. So our vines start growing in March, April. We're really being attentive throughout the summer to make sure that we're getting the canopy growth that we need, have the crop load that canopy can handle. And so it makes my job as a winemaker much easier if I'm having grapes picked and delivered to the winery that are of the highest quality. Then we can go a little bit more hands off, less intervention in the winery, and not really have to manipulate anything. We try to let the fruit speak for itself.
Can you talk about the uniqueness of the grape based on your geographic climate there, that region?
Yeah, so there have been some incredible winemakers and soil scientists that had done a lot of due diligence pre me moving out here, because you have to look at the soil type, the microclimate, how much rain you're getting, how many growing degree days you have to make sure that you can actually, in fact, get that fruit ripe. Um, and so a lot of people recognize that our soil type matched up with southern France. And so Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, those varieties do really well here. We also do a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, not Full Draw specifically, but our region. In Paso Robles, there's something like 45,000 acres of vines planted, which is pretty incredible. So I didn't want to try to rewrite the wheel or recreate the wheel. And I love those varieties. So it was very easy for me to make the decision to purchase the property immediately adjacent to Booker Vineyard and start with those varieties, which we've been doing under the Full Draw wine label since 2016.
So what's the time process of this from conception to where you're actually sitting on the deck enjoying one where you're like, damn, this is good?
Well, it is a long
Yeah.
process. So once you purchase the property, you have to work the soil, you have to rip it, disc it, and get all of your infrastructure put in. So we've got metal wires, stakes, irrigation, plant the vines, and then you don't see fruit coming from the vines for 3 to 4 years.
Hmm.
After that, you bring the grapes to the winery to make the wine. And the wine sits in barrel for about 18 months after you harvest it. And then Full Draw goes an extra step further. So we actually hold the wine in bottle after we bottle it for about a year before releasing it. So in that time frame, you're talking 6 years. And so those 6 years are a challenge, and you're just praying that something good is coming out of the back end. Otherwise, you spent a lot of time and money and said, "Oh man, I might have made a mistake."
Uh-huh.
But coming out of the gate in 2016, it was an incredible growing season. The fruit came out awesome. The wines were fantastic. So I really hit a string of exceptionally high quality vintages, being 2016, 17, 18, 19. So we really got a good jump start with full draw and making our wine during those years.
Um, who's who is coming up with the combinations? And by, I mean, because the successful blend here is like you're like a chemist, right? It's X% of this, X% of this, X% of this, and some of them. So who's doing that?
Me specifically. So after fermentation, we put the wine in barrel, and usually use throughout that vintage 30 to 40% new French oak, which will impact the wine. And so we want to see a transition of how that wine tastes in those barrels. So we really don't start tasting, let's say the wine goes in a barrel October of 2025. I won't taste those wines until April of 2026. So I let it sit in barrel for 6 to 8 months before even trying to understand the wine. So once I get to that point and I think that the wine is in a good spot, I will then taste every barrel individually. And then I've got a spreadsheet built, and I'll keep notes on each wine and each barrel and give it a grade. Then also say, I think that this barrel will fit best in this wine. And so we make 6 different red wines, 2 white wines, and a rosé. So we have to think about a lot of different wines. But then we'll trial some wines for 2, 3 months before coming up with a final blend. Sometimes it happens on the first try. It's pretty rare that that happens. But because we really want to make sure that we're putting the best quality product in the bottle. So we go through a number of different trials and renditions of that. So the wines will range every year 10 to 20% different than the year before, while keeping its same profile so people know and understand what that wine's going to be.
This might be like picking your favorite child, but do you have a favorite?
Just like children, it depends on the
Depends
day.
on the day. Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, Grenache specifically got me into wine. It got me focused and interested in wine.
Okay.
So we make a wine called Hardpoint, which is 100% Grenache. Uh, you'd be hard pressed to sway me away from that wine. So even though I say I don't have a favorite, I reach for that bottle more often than any of the other wines that we make.
So what's been the hardest part of doing this?
There's been a couple things. Obviously, water is a massive issue in
Sure.
California. Um, we got very fortunate a couple years ago to get as much rain as we did back-to-back years in 22 and 23. In 22, we got something like 44 inches, and a normal year is 16. So really helped replenish the water table, and we're in a good spot now. But leading up until that point, we were really having to micromanage what water was going to which sections of the vineyard. And with us planting young vines in 2013 and 2015, those require so much more water
Hmm.
than our mature vines. And so it was really playing I don't want to say a guessing game, but you really had to micromanage where the water was going, how much water each week. So now we don't have to do that as much. So getting out of that challenge is very nice. And then the other one has been labor. So with us farming everything by hand, um, we have field workers out in the vineyard. Let's call it 60% of the year. We've been fortunate the last few years to get in a good spot with a few of the workers that we have, specifically our supervisor Alicia. She's been with me for 7 years. Um, but they have to manage who's coming in at what time, how many people, uh, and obviously in our ever-changing climate of politics,
Hmm.
that's always something that sits in the back of our mind as well.
So how do you, I mean, doesn't that make you sweat that out?
Yeah, I mean that really does. So we work with a vineyard management company, and so they come in and we meet once a week and discuss what we're going to work on, what we're going to do in the vineyard. Because I sell about 60% of the fruit that I produce off the vineyard to other wineries, but with me launching Full Draw, the wine brand, and traveling as much as I do for sales, I didn't think that I was doing my clients a service by being gone and not having an extra set of eyes on the property. So they've got a couple incredible farmers that will come in weekly and look at everything, make sure everything looks good, because there's some sales trips that I'll go on that are 14 days long.
Mm.
Um, and so I just don't think that it's fair, not only to my clients, but to myself either. So I want to make sure that the property is in good hands, and they have access to all of the laborers, and they bring everybody in. So I have had to fortunately take a step back from trying to find my own labor, which has been nice.
How many do you usually need?
It depends on the job. Most days we'll have 6 to 8 people here.
Okay.
Harvest of 2022, we got really hot in September, 115, 117 degrees. And so all of my clients, I don't know why, but all the stars aligned. All of my fruit clients that purchase grapes from us, plus myself, wanted to pick generally at the same time. So there was one night we started at 9 p.m., had 2 tractors with light towers. Everybody had headlamps. We started at 9 p.m. We had 22 people picking, 2 tractor drivers, a forklift driver to unload fruit, me running around making sure everybody's picking the right thing. And a
In the
normal,
dark.
yeah, in the dark. And a normal night, we would pick something like 6 or 7 tons of fruit. That's how we measure everything. That night, we picked 23 tons.
Whew.
It was, we harvested 1/3 of our vintage in 12 hours. And so
Wow.
I got home, my wife and kids saw me and they go, "You don't look very good." And I said, "I don't feel very good either."
Yeah.
8 o'clock in the morning, I was covered in dirt and dust and looked awful. But the wines from 2022 came out fantastic. So I think everybody made the right decision picking. We had a little rain coming that we had to get the fruit off the vine. So the struggles are different in every fashion. And with each job, like I was saying, you could have 2 or 3 people in the vineyard. You could have 30 people. It just kind of
Mhm.
depends.
So as you look at where you want this to go, what do you envision? There are those who really make like the tasting room experience a big part of it, but that can be very labor and time intensive. And do you really want to get into that? How do you look at that?
So we do a little bit of that. We do host tastings here. That is a main source of revenue for us.
Okay.
It is very important. We don't have what I would call a tasting room yet. That is in the future works, because our town, I don't want to say it's unfound, but it's being found by wine consumers across the country. And so we see our tourism increase every year. So we've got new hotels, new restaurants. I think everybody in the hospitality sector here is really elevating their game and elevating their experience that they're offering. So it's something that we need to be mindful of, to not be left behind. Um, so we host tastings here at the winery, and it's really great because you actually taste in the cellar. So you're surrounded by the tanks and the barrels, and it's a really great experience. Our staff is fantastic. Sarah and Gary do a fantastic job hosting people. So it is labor intensive, but everybody that's in the industry know that that's a part of it. And so I don't think anybody shies away from hosting people.
Do you remember what it was like for you when you hosted your first one? Did you ever get a moment where you could stand kind of off to the side in the room and look out? And I mean, this is when it's all come true, right? And you have people in there sampling what you've worked on for years. Like, what is that like?
So funny story. We finished our construction on our winery in February of 2020. So
Oh,
really not ideal timing.
yeah.
I didn't know it because they couldn't test for COVID, but I think that that's what I had because we were hosting our opening weekend, and I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest,
Mm.
coughing. I couldn't breathe. So I stayed at home. My wife came down to the winery, was hosting the tastings with Gary, and I think it was just the two of them at the time. And she sent a selfie up above the tanks with all the people in the winery, and I go, I wish I could have been there.
Oh my gosh, really?
But going back to Booker, I was also forced to do tastings because the great thing about Eric is he wanted you to see every aspect of the industry. And so you could step in and do any job. So he said, you also need to host tastings and come in on Saturdays and pour wine for people. And the first time I was doing it, I was so nervous because I was trying not to fumble over the blends. And, it's a 24-year-old kid and people are asking questions. I'm like, yeah, I don't know that yet. I just moved from Iowa last week. So let me get back. So back then I was very nervous, but um, talking about wine and talking about my passion and my love and my other children, my wines.
Mhm.
It's very easy for me because it's something that you love and you do every day.
I don't know if it's just my extended kind of circle of friends or that or not, but I think what we really took from COVID when you're isolated for so long, and I have two kids, so it's the four of us in our house, and they're learning remotely, and we're trying to work remotely, and all kinds of stuff. But the one thing in our extended circle is that I feel like COVID, as awful as it was, we got some stuff right, some stuff wrong, probably like we do with most everything. But for a lot of my friends and for our family, I think we've really kind of valued experiences more than stuff, because during COVID you could buy stuff as long as you could buy it online pretty much, right? Like we supported our local restaurants by you drive up and they figured out all kinds of cool ways where they could still go. But it was the experiences for the most part that we were not able to do. And I feel like when it was almost like a starter's pistol when they reopened travel and all that kind of stuff, like we're going everywhere, right? Like, is that, you mentioned that it's that in-person experience is a big part of your revenue piece. So how do you make that truly an experience where, we go do it, we come back to Iowa and we're like, gosh dang, I can't wait to tell everybody about that. Like what goes into that?
So it's a number of things. One is it's not just me being the lead piece. It's our town, and we talk about that. So I've got friends that own restaurants. We want to make sure that they're getting the best experience and the highest quality food there. The hotels are really, you want your whole weekend to be that great experience. Now, if I can be a shining star in that, great. But everybody does things a little bit differently. So the way that we do it and the way that we focused on doing it was setting up what we call tasting wine flight style. So you have all 5 or 6 wines poured in front of you. You sit down, and our hospitality team sits down with you,
Mm.
talk about our wine labels. We'll talk about the wines. You'll get a little bit of backstory, but then also you get friendly banter and talking about where else you're going, what else you're doing. Because one of the things that I pride Paso Robles in doing, and the people here, is we'll ask, hey, what other wineries are you going to? Do you have any free time? You should go check out this new winery, because word of mouth is just incredible. It's an incredible tool for Paso Robles, because we really do believe and buy into the mindset and the motto of rising tides lift all ships. So if you leave the weekend and you say, God, I've been to other wine areas and done other experiences, but Paso is just so awesome. I think that that's where we really shine as a region. Um, so just being a part of that is huge.
Do you get a lot of time to talk to the folks who show up there? I'm curious if they're from the region, if they're from other parts of the country, or who's coming out.
All over the country now. It used to be predominantly people driving in California coming here.
Okay.
This weekend we had people from Orlando, New York, North Carolina. So, like I was telling you earlier, I think that Paso, I don't want to call Paso Robles an unfound area, but it's getting more attraction and more attention where people are more interested in coming out here. And one of the best things is we have a regional airport 30 minutes away that flies in and out of Dallas, Phoenix, Los
Nice.
Angeles, San Francisco, Denver. So American Airlines and United are big there, but just landing and then only having to drive 30 minutes, people really enjoy that.
So where do you want Full Draw to go?
I really focus on growing organically. And by what I mean by that is as we are selling more wine and need more wine, we'll hold back more fruit from the vineyard. Really want to see it in new markets, and that's really what I've been working on. Just finding full draw is hard enough when you're in Paso, but East Coast is something where people can't always make that flight all the way out to California. So a majority of my spring this year was spending time in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, um, and yeah, just introducing the wine to new people. So that's the biggest thing for me, and it's also nice being able to personally pour the wine and see people's reaction and get their feedback on how much they enjoy the wine. So it is a lot of fun.
Traveling salesman, is that easy or hard for you naturally?
I think that it's easy for me to do. The one hard thing is having two children, 4. That makes it very difficult. And then also having the faith in our staff here to operate the winery while I'm gone for extended periods of time, which we do, and it's fantastic. So it gives me the opportunity to do that. But um, I enjoy talking to people, and especially if they enjoy my wine. And it's really not a hard job to do if you say I've got to go to this country club tonight and have all my wines paired with all these awesome foods and talk to awesome people. So I'm not going to complain too much.
Where do you see your challenge in the next few years? I mean, you as the state itself, obviously now you're fortunate maybe right now with water. So you got water to think about, you got labor to think about, you're thinking about breaking into all these markets where you're not currently right now. What else is there?
I think the biggest challenge and one thing that I do want to do is try to get wine introduced to younger generations.
Yeah, because they're not drinking it as much.
I don't think the younger generations are drinking nearly as much as we did when we were young.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many more things out there where it used to be a handful of beer brands, a handful of wine brands. And so it was diverse as it is now. And so you have this landscape where people don't know a lot about wine and then get maybe confused by where it's coming from or can't pronounce the variety. So one of the things that I really enjoy doing is trying to target younger country clubs, younger regions, and talk to people, 30 to 35, and get them introduced to wine. And it may not be my wine that they enjoy, but just getting the foot in the door, finding something that you like. So that's going to be another challenge that we're going to have. And I think that might be one of the larger hurdles. But I think that as younger generations get introduced to wine, they're going to understand that it's not as hard to get into. And my biggest thing is if you enjoy drinking it, don't think about it, just have fun. So you don't need to get too technical with it.
Do you have to think about the makeup of the wine differently to connect with these younger people if they're obsessed with energy drinks and protein and low sugar and low cal and all kinds of stuff? Like, I mean, there's only so much you can do though.
Yeah, and it's also hard to hit all of those key talking points. I mean, our wine already is low sugar. It is very low sulfite. So fitting that into the conversation, and I hate saying this, but sometimes you have to read the room and figure out what people want to hear, because our wine, the way that we make it, is really low intervention, high quality. So you just have to figure out the direction you want to take the conversation.
But you're organic, right?
Yes, we are. We are not certified organic. We're organic in practice. The organic certification is about a 3-year process. The
Okay.
amount you have to spend. My wife had worked on that with another vineyard she was working with, and just looked at me one night and she said, "Until we have more staff and our kids are a little older, please do not make me do that."
But but I mean, if you're already bringing it into practice, that from what I read though, that is important. It seems like to younger folks. So can you explain what you're doing while you may not have the certification? What do you do in practice to be true to that?
We're not using commercial pesticides, herbicides. For us, the biggest thing is glyphosate, not using that.
Hmm.
In the fall, once harvest is over, we'll get the ground ready and then we plant an organic cover crop. And to decrease an extra pass, we actually bring in about 1,000 sheep to eat down that cover crop in the spring. So not only are they eating it down, you're cutting down on your emissions and your tractor passes, but also the biggest thing is they're pooping in the vineyard and they're bringing that compost back in naturally. So their hooves are pounding it back into the soil. And just the whole ecosystem that we have here since I purchased the property and it was commercially farmed with all of these things and bringing it back to an organic state, you see different bug life, animal life, and it just is in our mind and the way we like to handle it, better ecosystem. And also a nice area for us to raise our children and not be too scared about what we're putting in our bodies.
More work though, right?
It is, no question. And not everything organic is better than commercial. And so we also have to toe that line because, there's some pesticide products out there that they say, well, this is organic. It's like, well, yeah, but it scorches everything and it kills all the bugs versus just targeting one bug. So it's one of those things where we just have to be mindful of what that organic state is. So, but for us, it's just low intervention, treating the vines with most care because grapevines actually can outlive us. I mean, you look at certain regions in Europe where vines are 110 plus years old. So if we can treat them right, and we're just stewards of the land. Yes, we may own it right now, but we're not going to own it forever. So whether we pass that down to our children or to someone else, we want to make sure that while we had it in our hands, we treated it with care.
Connor, best of luck. We appreciate the conversation.
Hey, Dave, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and best to you.
You can learn more about Connor and our profile piece about him in the American Farmland Owner newsletter. It's free, it comes out every week, and in it, we bring you interviews with thought leaders on the relevant challenges and opportunities for farmland owners, operators, and the ag curious. Check it out now. Just go to AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast. We hope you can let your friends know about what we're doing here. It'll help us grow, and we appreciate it. Thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.